Hey everybody. So my recent interview with Val for the YouTube documentary H-Bomber Guy, A Measured Response, has put me in an interesting position where for a moment I have kind of the ear of the far left. And the comments on the video, I've been following the comments and have been largely positive. And here and there have been things that I have wanted to address and talk about. And one of them is a comment that has come in from someone named Thibault Loughery, I think is how you would pronounce that, who takes exception to, or takes issue with, the part of the video where we talked about the argument Harris and I had about the term cultural Marxism. So to talk about what's going on, or to give some background. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't want to waste too much time giving background. Watch the original video; kind of lays it all out. But the term terms like cultural Marxism and the ideas associated with it were getting heavily disseminated in Gamergate circles and a lot of other circles, similar circles back in the 2015-2014 era. Apropos of the fact that Breitbart News, Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, and these people were actively working to seek out these kind of pockets of unrest and discontent on the internet and manipulate them into becoming, pro-Trump kind of online bastions of pro-Trump ideology in preparation for Donald Trump running for president. This is something that was discussed in the QAnon documentary on HBO Max, if you want to get some deeper discussion of that. But anyway, at the time these terms were getting cast around in full, by people who were pushing them in conscious knowledge of the fact that these were pockets of outrage on the internet that were getting really, really tired of PC culture, by which I mean political correctness culture, not personal computing culture. Although a general aggravation with Microsoft tends to permeate most technical discussions at this point. Anyway, we're aggravated with PC culture, looking for explanations, feeling like their voices weren't being heard, and so these terms started getting kicked around. Now, I made a mistake in using the expression cultural Marxism because it does not accurately define what I was opposed to. So to that end, it is not the correct term and not something I agree with, and I'll get into why I don't agree with it, but also try to explain the context in which what I was talking about occurred. So we had gotten into this. Harris came after me on Twitter because I had criticized cultural Marxism, and he hit me, as I said in Val's video, hit me with the accusation that Nazis were critics of cultural Marxism and that it is a Nazi conspiracy theory. And I pointed out then, as I will point out to you now, that the term cultural Marxism did not come directly from the Frankfurt School or from the Nazis. It did not come. It did not come about until decades later, when the when conservative and hard right-leaning voices in the United States were trying to find a way to demonize progressive values and the progressive ideals that were coming into the mainstream during the 60s, 70s, 80s, and well into the 90s. And so I pointed that out to Harris, and he said that the Nazis were critics of something called cultural Bolshevism. And I pointed out that cultural Bolshevism is a distinct concept from cultural Marxism, and it was not until the 2003 essay by piece of writing by a professor named Matthew Feldman, who drew comparison between cultural Marxism and cultural Bolshevism. And there is an ideological similarity, but to say that the idea is directly that cultural Bolshevism and cultural Marxism were essentially the same thing is, and that one continues from the other, is historic. It is historically and logically inaccurate. It's essentially a correlation causation fallacy. So here's what Thibault said. He says, okay, but you realize using cultural Marxism as a talking point at least makes you Nazi adjacent, right? Cultural Marxism / cultural Bolshevism is a literal Nazi propaganda talking point invented by the Nazis and is only used by people of that disposition. No one of genuine integrity or of any academic merit uses that. The fact Jordan thinks he was called a Nazi because he criticized cultural Marxism, a thing that does not exist in reality, only in the mind of Nazis, and not because he invoked that and uses it as a talking point or a source of his propaganda, suggests that he is not as sincere or reformed as he is letting on. Okay. No, I'm not using it as a source of my propaganda. I was just using the term incorrectly, not being aware of the cultural baggage that it has. Now, the thing is, we'll talk about the history of it, and let's talk about the part of the founding of the Frankfurt School, the history of that nobody disagrees with, nobody disputes. Okay. In the early 1900s, 1923, a group of German Marxists convened to found a think tank known as the Institute for Social Research in Frankfurt, which later became simply known as the Frankfurt School. The point of their research was to try to analyze and come to a consensus on why World War I had not resulted in the collapse of capitalism and the takeover of Marxist ideals the world over. They ultimately concluded that people had been kind of lulled into a false sense of security by consumerism, and as such were not aware of the reality of what was going on. So that was what they discovered. In 1933, 10 years later, they hastily relocated to the United States, and due to the rise of Nazism. Okay, concurrent to that, Nazis were critical of something called cultural Bolshevism, where they were criticizing the emergence of progressive values in the arts and humanities and attitudes about sex that they felt were an impediment to their ultimate goals for the German people and the country of Germany and all of that. Okay. Now, when I say that there is an ideological similarity to the ideas discussed in cultural Marxism versus cultural Bolshevism, what I mean is that far right-leaning groups, conservative groups in general, have a great adherence to time-honored traditions and the edifice of the status quo and that sort of thing. And so their natural impulse, their natural perspective is build the wall, fortify everything that already exists, protect it against any new and external intrusive ideas. And so consequently what happens is every far-right group that gains any kind of prominence, whether it be Nazis or the modern-day GOP, which no, I'm not making a comparison between them and Nazis. Obviously, there's tremendous distance between them. But in general, any conservative group that's working to maintain a specific cultural edifice will regard any outside influence as a threat to that cultural edifice, and will seek to find thematic underpinnings that unite all of the opposing values as incendiary or otherwise maliciously motivated. So so that's kind of where there is a similarity, but it's not literally it's not literally the right wing of America deciding to take on specifically Nazi ideas and propagate Nazi ideas. And here's the thing. I will reiterate to you as I reiterate now, I was then as I am now a left libertarian. My main person that I was a fan of, that I was drawing my beliefs from at the time, was Ayn Rand, who was Jewish and a woman and had extremely, compared to the kind of values that were being espoused by Nazis, to whom she was staunchly opposed, had extremely progressive values. The values of, let's live in a society where everybody gets to do what they want and pursue their own individual aims, are fully and completely opposed to Nazism, the Nazis who believed that they wanted everything to be every individual action to be an outgrowth of the good of an outgrowth of the motive good for the German people. So it is completely and totally opposed. So when the idea of cultural Marxism began to take hold and people started trying to promote this concept, this conspiracy theory, if you will, they laid out a series of 11 specific aims. And I will tell you what my beliefs are, Thibault, and in relation to these aims that they have. Okay, the creation of racism offenses. Well, I do think that racism is an offense. It is a wholly unacceptable practice that should not be indulged, period. Continual change to create confusion. I don't think that change I don't think that change is necessarily done to create confusion. I think that it can. I think that people get gung-ho about ideas and don't necessarily think about the long-term consequences, and we as a result have to deal with the long-term consequences of ideas that are adopted too quickly. But that doesn't mean that those ideas were adopted with the express purpose of dismantling or upsetting people or making it difficult for them to live. I honestly don't think most people promote the ideas that they promote thinking, gee, I hope I can fuck everything up for myself and everyone else. They're not thinking that. They're thinking this will probably be better. And sometimes new ideas are adopted and taken on that have unintended consequences, and we can work from there as it comes along. 3, the teaching of sex and homosexuality to children. Well, I have no problem with, and indeed I am in favor of, comprehensive sex ed in schools, and I think that includes a reasonable factual understanding of what homosexuality is, so that it is not stigmatized, and kids who are emerging, realizing that they are emerging themselves as gay or on the LGBT spectrum, are not unfairly treated or stigmatized. Now, I'll give you an example of what I don't agree with. I saw a YouTube video recently about a gay teacher who makes it a point to dress in drag every day at his school so that because he feels that is creating a safe space for LGBT youth. No, you create a safe space for LGBT youth by putting a sign on your wall that says this space is a safe space for LGBT youth, and you go from there. There is absolutely no reason for you to dress up in drag, and I have no problem with him dressing up in drag in his own time, having fun, doing whatever he wants, but he is not there he is not there at the school to dress in drag and promote drag culture. He's there to teach the kids, for the same reason that I would not want a heterosexual teacher getting up in front of the kids in a leisure suit with the shirt unbuttoned to the navel and a necklace with a Coke spoon and gold medallions hanging down, reeking of horrible, cheap cologne, drinking some exotic alcoholic beverage or whatever stereotypical accoutrements of straight nightclub culture you could think of. I wouldn't want that either, because his purpose is not to be there doing that. His purpose is to be there teaching the kids. So, the undermining of schools and teachers' authority. So I have a certain balanced view about this issue. I don't think that it is the purpose of the schools to instill specific cultural values in children. I don't think that teachers ought to be imposing their values, left or right wing, on students. You are there to teach information. You are there to present them with new ideas all across the board. You are not there to take advantage of your position and your role and influence on them to push them one way or the other. That said, I do think there is a problem with parents who go to the teacher and say, how do you explain these grades, rather than going to the kid and saying, how do you explain these grades? Let's see, the destruction of American national identity through immigration. No, absolutely not. I don't think that immigration is meant to accomplish that goal. I think that immigration I think that the idea, conceptually, the idea that anyone can immigrate to this country and become an American is the cornerstone of the American concept. We always hear the term diversity is our strength, and we don't really talk about what it means. What it really means, the reason diversity is our strength, is because America was founded as a unique concept where the national identity is endowed upon any individual who wishes to come to this country and participate in a constructive way. Kind of like if you go, like I'm a huge Japanophile, I'm fascinated by Japanese culture, but if you go to Japan and you as a non-Japanese person, even as a non-Japanese Asian person, immigrate to Japan, become a citizen, you will never be thought of as fully Japanese. You will always be thought of as a foreigner. You will always be thought of as external, even though you are legally a citizen. That is not true here. In practice, in theory, I should say. In theory, that is not true here. The idea is that anyone can come to this country and be an American. That's why diversity is our strength, because the American identity encompasses anyone who wants to be a part of it. So no, I don't think that immigration threatens the national identity. Now, are there reasonable concerns you can have about vetting the people that are coming into this country? Reasonable concerns about what illegal immigration can do to the labor market and things like that? Yes, those are reasonable discussions you can have. But as far as it threatening national identity, no, I don't think it does. The promotion of excessive drinking. I don't think excessive drinking needs promotion. It promotes itself. Anyway, emptying of churches. No, as a recovering atheist, I can tell you, no, that's not what's going on that side. Atheists, the more politically active, I guess you could say culturally aggressive atheists, view themselves simply as intellectually liberating the human mind and making people able to live free of guilt and that sort of thing. Returning to faith and spirituality, I still am in favor of liberating the human mind and making people intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually liberated. It took a long time, a lot of study, but I realized that my spiritual views actually are not an impediment to that. Anyway, so no, I don't think there's any great conspiracy to empty out the churches. I will say this, I do think that a lot of extremist churches, the extreme evangelical, right-wing evangelical Christians, are seeing definitely a drop in numbers, and good for them, because that is not a bastion of spiritual development. That is a bastion of theocratic political action. And so I think more people who are Christian are looking to other places that are more directly spiritually fulfilling. Look at someone like Rod Parsley, for example, who his sermons have nothing that offers spiritual growth. He just gets up there and complains about how awful progressives are in a voice that suggests he really missed his calling as a death metal singer. Anyway, an unreliable legal system with bias against victims of crime. It's weird. An unreliable legal system with bias against victims of crime. I don't think any system is perfect, and I think our legal system certainly has its areas where it could be reformed, but structurally, the United States, the United States structurally is founded on the idea that we will err with the strongest possible caution on the side of the accused, because it is in realizing that no legal system will ever be perfect. It's better to risk letting a guilty man go free than to risk letting an innocent man face punishment. So with that being our values, we are structured in this country to give the strongest possible benefit of the doubt. Again, you still have to control for human biases and prejudices and all of that. I am not saying it's perfect. I'm saying that the ideal that this country ought to inhabit is something that does give the accused the strongest possible benefit of the doubt. So when I see conservatives pushing an idea like that, when I see conservatives pushing ideas like that, the impression that I get is that I'm dealing with people who don't understand what this country is and what it's supposed to be. This country, United States, is basically under attack from two sides, which is the side that wants to, on the left, that wants this country to be some sort of Marxist shared community concept, and on the other side, the royalists and the monarchists, or the pseudo-royalists and pseudo-monarchists, who don't really understand that this country was founded against that system of government and against that concept, that it was about progressing beyond that. And so when you hear right-wing voices pushing bullshit like this, it comes from a vantage of them not really understanding what this country is. They just can't pry their tiny little fingers off the idea that this is not a monarchy, that does not have a king and queen. It's just like when I am old enough to remember when Bush II went to war with Iraq unnecessarily, and critics of that were shouted down by the right-wing pundits of the time, like Bill O'Reilly and Ann Coulter, as being people who didn't love their country and did not love their country and did not support their president. Well, the great thing about this country is I'm not required to love it, and I'm not required to support my president. That's actually part of the idea. When Donald Trump got into the White House, I remember seeing a tweet from somebody who was actually saying that they were trying to say that the time for opposing the president is during the election, or the time for voicing your dissent is only during the election, and then during the actual presidency, you are supposed to have unwavering support for the president. And it's no, that's not how this country works. Mark Twain said it best: patriotism means supporting your country all of the time and your government when they deserve it. And that's basically what the attitude that this country was founded on. Anyway, number 9, dependency on the state or state benefits. Well, I do think that there have been efforts that I will say were done in good faith that have resulted in people becoming welfare dependent and dependent on the state and that sort of thing. I don't think that it's the result of some fiendish attempt to undercut society. I think it's done by well-meaning people that are trying to help and, again, don't realize the long-term consequences of their actions. So that would be where I stand on that. I think there's a reasonable place for state benefits. I think it's and that sort of thing, and a reasonable place for the government in our lives. But as far as the promotion of that, I don't think it's an attempt to fiendishly and underhandedly and connivingly trick us into becoming dependent on the government. I think it's just people trying to do what they think will work, and ultimately encountering bad long-term consequences. Control and dumbing down of the media. I think that the media dumbs itself down. I don't think that there's a conspiracy theory. I just think that And this will sound bizarre, I know, coming from someone who supports capitalism, but I think that there is I think that, the market is going to inevitably appeal to the lowest common denominator, and that's going to ultimately, that's ultimately going to result in trash TV like professional wrestling and Honey Boo Boo. And stupid stuff like that comes along to entertain, simple things and use simple minds. The real question is actually what commits to, what idea or what media concepts are enshrined in the long term and become celebrated as achievements in the long term. That's the real question. And, something like Honey Boo Boo, as an example, is never going to be enshrined as a great cultural accomplishment for this country or anything like that. That's the real question, is what's happening in the long term. And in the long term, quality still wins out. Anyway, 11, encouraging the breakdown of the family. Well, I happen to think that a two-parent household is the most effective for raising children. I'm liberal enough to say that can be male, two men or two women, or heterosexual couples, or what have you. I don't think that is something that should be imposed on anybody. Not everything works well. Not every system works well for every person. And, and I say that as somebody that I'm 38 and I'm single and I have no great desire to get married. I don't think I work well in a coupling like that. So I don't think that it's necessarily something I ought to pursue, not being able to do it well and not being able to do it effectively. So anyway, you notice there, that's my feeling about the alleged aims of cultural Marxism. And the reason I bring all of that up is to show you that there are tremendous degrees of difference in political opinion. And just, if you take nothing else away from this, sir, Adam Carolla, of all people, said something very profound recently, where he said, the left acknowledges no middle. And that's a problem, is increasingly we are seeing on the left this attitude that if you are to the right of Karl Marx, you will become no different from Adolf Hitler. And that's absolutely ridiculous. And the thing is, saying that, I know one of the favorite terms that the left likes to use now is dog whistling. This is not a dog whistle for anything. I have told you my exact beliefs with about these issues with no subtle underpinnings of anything. This is literally what I believe. So the question I then ask to you is, can you accept that this is literally my position? Or are you going to have to double down on the idea that this is that there's some secret hidden agenda? Because the thing is, what you're doing here, I think what is happening, and I could be wrong about this, but this is my analysis of the thought process that you have embodied in your message, Thibault. And I say this because I've done this with people before, and I alluded to doing this in the video, and it's something that we need to be conscious of, is when we hear somebody say something that might cause us to want to connect with them on a human level or have an empathetic human response, what we start doing is invoking the larger potentialities of what they're suggesting and trying to suggest that if there is these larger potentialities we can draw, then we can subtly and carefully suggest that those might be those might just be their actual conscious intentions after all, and then if we can get that possibility on the table, we can reasonably excuse ourselves from interacting in a human, empathetic, compassionate manner with another human being. Now, I'm not suggesting that you owe me any great modicum of sympathy, Thibault, but I will say that I have taken the time to sit down and tell you what I believe and why I believe it. No, I am not Nazi adjacent. There is nothing about my beliefs that is Nazi adjacent. And I enjoy a personal lifestyle that were it to openly fly in the face of actual Nazism during the actual Third Reich, I would be quickly and uniformly escorted to a concentration camp were I not just shot on the spot. So the idea that anything I say or believe could be Nazi adjacent is absolutely absurd. I was incorrect to use the term cultural Marxism to describe what I believe. But that does not mean that I am pushing the cultural Marxist conspiracy theory, or that I am trying to, or that I am in any way, shape, or form trying to quietly dog whistle for the far right. I am not. The far right are pathetic, disgusting losers who are probably frustrated by the fact that they find themselves well into the act of coitus only to have their girlfriends ask, "Is it in yet?" So I have no sympathy whatsoever for the far right. And hopefully that comes across. My question to you is, can you acknowledge that? Can you, Thibault, acknowledge that there is a middle ground? Can you acknowledge the middle? And I don't even, and believe it or not, I don't even like the expression the middle, because I don't feel like, I don't want to be in the middle between two ideologies that I don't agree with. Going back and forth between two cages is not freedom. So I don't consider myself middle ground between either of these points of view. I consider myself wanting to try something new, which is the American experiment and everything that the American experiment can embody. And one of the big things about the American experiment is the idea that if you and I disagree, it's not the end of the world, and we're not automatically vile people if we disagree about major issues. So anyway, I hope that gets across. If I had it to do over, I never would. If I had it to do over, I never would have used the expression cultural Marxism. But all I did was incorrectly use an expression. And we live in a world now, due to social media, again, due to the unintended consequences of social media, where every stupid thing you've ever said, every fuck up, every screw up remains enshrined forever, and you never live it down, you never grow past it, you are forever stuck with all of the dumbass things you have ever said in your entire past. And here's the thing, the priest at my church, which is a very liberal church, they do gay marriages, they're neutral on abortion, they're very forward thinking about race issues. It is a very progressive church, because I could not stand to go to a hard right-wing church. My priest gave a very stirring commentary on cancel culture, that he said cancel culture is profoundly anti-Christian, because it's holding people to account for the crime of not being perfect. And we have to be okay with imperfect people, because imperfect people are the only kind we have. I am not, Thibault, asking you to acknowledge me as some great scion of virtue. I am asking you to acknowledge me and anyone else you disagree with as human beings who are just flawed and fucked up like the rest of us. And maybe we say the wrong things sometimes, or we don't communicate our ideas well. But that doesn't mean that does not mean that we deserve to be eternally raked over the coals with accusations of believing something we don't believe in.